We are here again. And this morning, it was, Tesla started off in the green. I mean, big time, like up $5 or $6. And then it went down into the red because it was following the market. The NASDAQ fell off a cliff for a while. And then all of a sudden it was back up again and it finished barely in the green. Well, I am starting to think, and I've got somebody here to think with me. I've got Nicholas Gibbs here. Nick, I've been thinking that maybe any bad news for Tesla tomorrow, which everybody's concentrating on, that maybe all the bad news that could happen is baked in, but maybe not. Maybe it could go down depending on what happens tomorrow, or maybe we could have a big bounce if things are a nice beat. What in the world, as the co-host of Good News Tuesday? No. You can give me bad news. It's okay. All right. I'm going to. What do you think? What's going to happen?
Um, Tomorrow with the stock or
So
what specifically?
over the next couple of days, do you think the bad news is baked in? We're down, huge over the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, I think a lot of bad news is I mean, there's no way of knowing if all of it's baked in, but I think Gary and Ross and them they sure are doing their part on trying to add in a lot of bad news, in my opinion. I think for people who look at things for 1 or 2 quarters and all they care about is seeing Tesla as a car company, yeah, I think a lot of the bad news is probably baked in more or less. We'll see what happens. I'm sure some people are, like the pop today. I'm sure some people are buying in case that there is a surprise to the upside. But I think normally we see the stock go down after earnings, and there's like a 2 week reset, and then we really know the real reaction after that. So I don't know. I think there's definitely a extra effort, if you will, to beat down Tesla. I mean, it's crazy how much is down just in January. It's somewhat ridiculous. Yet nothing has changed.
Yeah, I know.
Nothing's changed. Well, no, I'm lying. Things have changed. FSD 12 came out.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so yes, I don't know. I think a lot of it is just market manipulation.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, a lot of bad press. So a couple of weeks after this meeting, after we have the earnings report tomorrow, Elon says he's going to have this all hands meeting where the Tesla crew and I guess it's not going to have all 140,000 gathered in one place, but one way or the other, he's going to be speaking to the entire Tesla organization. And this meeting will be open for us to watch as well. He just did this with SpaceX. It was a pretty darn interesting meeting. Do you think he would hold such a meeting this quickly after the earnings report if he didn't have something pretty cool to announce?
So yeah, I think I'm a little bit on the contrarian when it comes to that. I don't think he's going to announce anything. Um, I mean, because he didn't announce anything with SpaceX, right?
Right.
There was no announcement, and so I think it's gonna be the same kind of spirit: is celebrating what we have done,
Uh-huh.
celebrating where we are in the market, celebrating where we're going, and just repainting, you know, kind of level setting again on where we're going and why Tesla is just in a place on their own. You know, like I'd be shocked if he doesn't highlight the fact that while Tesla is hitting record sales, while Tesla is doing all these things that is just setting record after record, they're still up and to the right. Maybe not on margins, maybe not on revenue and all that, but they're doing this in the midst of this current recession that the auto market really is in.
Right.
They're doing all this in the same time that we're seeing other companies pull back on EVs, pull back on autonomy, and yet they're still pressing forward, right? It's literally as if everybody's saying we give up. It's going to be Tesla. We're just going to do what we can until it's inevitable. And so it's just a very interesting point. I think he's going to highlight a lot of that stuff. He'll probably highlight a lot of stuff with Optimus and the good work. If there's an announcement, maybe it's AI Day, maybe,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
no product announcements. I don't foresee any product announcements.
I would love to have him give us the AI Day date. That'd
Yeah,
be fine. That would be, if he just did that, I would just love it.
agreed.
I'm of course predicting that it will be on April 20th. For obvious reasons, but that's just me. Listen, I try to think outside the box. I try to do things on this channel that nobody else is talking about. We'll talk about one more of those later in the session, but I just remembered another one. Nobody except me. I believe I'm the only one. Tell me if you know of anybody else that talks about the massive, massive opportunity we have in the flyover states of the United States to sell more Model 3s and Model Ys, because most of those states are sitting at about 2, 3, 4%, 5% adoption rates on EVs, where we have California at over 20%. I mean, there's this incredibly huge opportunity. And I keep saying they need to advertise to that part of the country. They need to advertise to the kind of folks that live in that part of the country. And that if they did that, if we could get that part of the US to even come close to the adoption in California, the state of Washington, state of Oregon, Arizona, et cetera, if we could just get them started, that we would sell out all those the unit capacity that we have in Austin that's just sitting there right now. What do you think?
I think so. So this is where I constantly come into friction with the Gary Blacks, and I mean, I guess in this case, you as well. I don't think it's an advertisement problem. The more you go into the flyover states, the more you go into the center of the country, the more that's a pricing issue, right? On the coast, you have the most affluent people. As you move to the center of the country, that changes very quickly, very dramatically. We take it for granted. Anybody who lives on the coast, right? You live on the coast. I live on the coast. Even in parts like Texas, I would say the majority of Texas is not the way Houston, Dallas, Austin are, right? So I think pricing matters in those areas, and doesn't matter how much you advertise, doesn't matter if I can't afford the monthly payments, I can't afford the monthly payments. No amount of advertising is going to change that. And so I do think that's a big function of it. Now, obviously, there is a certain degree where advertisement matters. We're not in a vacuum here. Two things can be true at the same time. But I think for the middle of the state, I think that's really the big thing. And I think that's where this Model 3 refresh will really have an impact potentially. I think this is where in 2024, the EV tax credit will really have an impact. And I think we might start to see a change when it comes to that. But so I agree with you on that is where the market is right now, where there's a lot of opportunity. I just don't think that it's a purely function of advertising because they don't know. I do agree that they probably don't know. At the same time, I also think that they probably can't afford the monthly payment. And that's a big problem that needs to be addressed. Whoever can solve that in the United States will dominate without a doubt. We see it in China, it's happening. BYD's working bottom up, Tesla's working top down. The two shall meet in the middle and compete. We don't have anything in the States right now that's doing that. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's my sense.
Yeah, I think you answered the question. My only feedback would be that I've been, of course, in marketing and advertising my entire career. It's primarily what I am as a marketing man. And if you don't, Elon is right, 100% right, that word of mouth is fantastic. That's the number one way that's if you can do anything, if you can get word of mouth, that's going to solve a lot of your problems. But there's also a factor of where people are either resistant, misinformed, being consistently misinformed by the press, and then also don't really even know the fact that things have changed dramatically. I'm from Missouri, that's where I spent the first 17 years of my life. And when I moved to the coast was way ahead of us on everything. When I moved to the West Coast. And then those styles and that music and everything else, it moved to the middle of the country, a couple of years later. The one thing we were way ahead of in the Midwest, though, was education, man, we were so much better than the coast. Oh, it was sad. But anyway, but as far as styles were concerned, as far as music, all, you know, all that kind of stuff, that moved from the coast inland. And I just think that the middle of the country is behind. And now we're seeing, you know, stats coming out today, 50% of the people in the United States are open to an EV, but they still are looking at the price and the charging, the capacity and or the charging availability as two things that are holding them back. And you can lease a Model 3 now for under $300. I think most folks that own a car can afford that, especially if they're going to save $100, $200 a month on fuel.
Yeah, true. I don't have the stats on this, but I'd be very curious. I can speak for a lot of friends I have. So, I mean, really, I guess it's just anecdote, but a lot of friends I have that, you know, are just more, I guess, blue collar forward, more center of the United States. They don't like the lease.
Yeah.
I obviously don't know everybody, right? So I'm a very small anecdote, and I don't have any data to back me up other than my own experience. But they like to own. They're very strong about ownership. It's theirs. You can't take it away from me, kind of thing. So it'd be interesting to understand that. So because I get the lease argument, but I mean, hell, I'm one of those people. I'll never lease.
Yeah.
I would never lease. Like I'll own. To me, leasing doesn't make sense. But that's the way my mind works. But I think a lot of people are like that as well. So anyways.
Yeah, but again, if you make a comparison in terms of purchasing, we're talking about Tesla Model 3 again under $40,000, closing in on $30,000, and you can't buy a Honda Accord for less than that. So it seemed, and that's before the fuel savings. I think there is a disconnect in the information. When you go down market, you also get less informed purchasers. And you don't have that word of mouth happening yet at the level you did on the coast, where fashion is so much of a bigger issue. Well, let's move on. I've heard a lot of people with good questions for Wednesday. What's at the top of your list? What are you hoping to hear on Wednesday that you don't know now?
So first of all, we gotta ask the question: is Elon going to be on? Is he not going to be on?
He's going to be on.
But I do think it's worth always exploring that question, because he has said when there isn't a crisis, there's going to be no need for me to be on. I would argue there is no crisis right now at Tesla.
Well, but
so maybe he won't be on.
I think he said he would still be on the annual. So this is the annual. So I don't think this is one he would miss.
You're right. That's a good point. All right. True. Okay. But anyway, so with that said, and I almost wish he wasn't going to be on it, because the number one question I believe right now is, the 25% ownership, all that, like how we should think about that. I want to know the answers to that. Like I want to hear what the C-suite says about that. Right? What do they say about it? If assuming Elon's going to be on there, I also like that question's going to be posed, even if he's on there, because one, it allows him to further clarify as a negotiating tactic to the board what he means by that. It helps us as investors, because I'm of the opinion the more ownership Elon has, the steadier the company is, the steadier that Wall Street will see it. The less he has ownership, to me, that's a bigger risk, because you can easily have a Carl Icahn out there, Bill Ackman, right, come in there and get very aggressive and change things up and screw everything up. And at that point, I don't even know if I want to be invested in the company when someone else has all this influence. So to me, while I believe in Tesla's vision, their mission, everything they're doing, that's all second to the fact that Elon's running the company, and that's the beginning of my investment thesis into Tesla, is that he is there, he's the head, he's the shot caller there. So I'm very interested in that question.
So I don't know if you noticed, but it is one of the 6 questions that will be asked, that's at the top of the list. I think it was 3rd or 4th. So I didn't realize that there was still quite this much anxiety about it. I have less anxiety. I believe that he is specifically talking about the human side of it, that he's very nervous that something would happen where the board or the stockholders themselves would rise up and be all about profits and not about protecting humanity from a runaway AI situation. So I believe that's really what he's concentrating on. I don't think it's about the money, and I don't think it's about
No,
power, and I don't think it's about power per se. I think it's really about managing that issue, that one issue.
yeah, I 100% agree. I don't think it's about money. I think it's about fending off. I mean, just to go to the extreme of it, like a George Soros doing something nefarious in the back end, right? If
Yeah,
he has 25% ownership and the retail community has their stake,
right,
he has essentially that's a majority we could have there, right? You throw on Kimball, right? Things like that. That's real control of the direction.
right.
Not total, not complete, right? But he can influence it in the right way. Whereas if he doesn't, then nefarious actors can come in and be malicious.
So anything else at the top of your list for questions for Wednesday?
Yeah, just really I don't want to rush an AI day. I wish somebody was asking about that, but I do want to know when they're going to have an AI day because now what's happened in January, we've seen the new version of Optimus, right? Gen 2.
Yep.
We have seen FSD 12. Right. I don't want to say it's rolled out, but at least Omar has it. So that is somebody who's not an internal employee. So it seems like we're definitely come up into a point where it's like, all right, let's do a little show and tell and see what's going on. So I would love to know what's going on with that. Financials and all that. I mean, I just to be honest, I just don't care right now. Like to me, it's irrelevant, right? It's irrelevant because one, I think we all understand that interest rates are still high, even though we're forecasting cuts and all that. They're still up there. They haven't come down.
No.
And that's still a big drag on the auto market, which creates, more friction. The
Mhm.
economy is still not sure what's going to happen, right? So that's still up in the air. We got this election that's throwing more things up in the air. And so while we are in the precipice of like, we can all finally breathe, we're not there yet. And so honestly, all the numbers to me is like, as long as they're getting vehicles out there, increasing the number, as long as they're still moving forward, that's all I care about. As long as Bot or Optimus making progress, FSD is making progress, that's all I care about right now. Because the thesis is not based on the hardware. That's not what my thesis is. It's on
Right.
the software.
Right. Yeah. So, of course, Optimus is at the very top of my list, and I would have, I don't know, 1,700 questions about
Yeah.
Optimus if I could get in a room with somebody important. But the other one, though, that a lot of people are asking, and I'm just wondering what you're thinking about right now in this regard, because it seems to be there's no visibility on it. We're really not seeing any visibility for a couple of months, and that's 4680. We're hearing that cathodes are being imported, continuing to be imported because they can't get the dry cathode right. We're not getting any updates in terms of the units. But have you got any thoughts? Would that be, I mean, because it affects the Cybertruck, whether it's, they got enough batteries to do that. It affects Model Ys, which we thought would be using 4680s. And if they don't use the 4680s, they've got to use other form factors that should be going into energy or going into, yeah. So, I mean, it's a pretty big deal to get these 4680s going. So what do you think?
Um, I don't think there's. I've seen the sentiment around 4680. I know a lot of people are stressed or have anxiety about it. I really don't. I mean, on the last call, Drew mentioned, all the lines that they're about to be building out. He's talking about at Cato that's going to be their essentially R&D, site. And I mean, it really does seem like it's chugging along. They've also essentially told us that batteries are not a limiting factor right now. And so as long as the batteries aren't a limiting factor, I'm not too worried about 4680. At the end of the day, I mean, really what they're getting to without calling it solid state is solid state. right? With the dry
Okay.
anode and cathode, like that's what they're essentially getting to. Nobody else is doing anything even near in production, and so you know R&D innovation doesn't happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
Like, we hear these things and we're like, oh, okay, we want it tomorrow, right? Like we have this like, we just don't have patience as, I don't know, maybe it's social media, maybe it's because we're just used to companies like Apple only announcing things when essentially it's ready to be sold.
Right.
But Tesla's transparent. SpaceX, they're transparent. They tell us, what the mission is, and then when it doesn't happen in the timeline that they predicted to tackle this thing that's never been done, people get upset and people are like, they're delayed. Oh, they've lost hope, or Elon's not doing enough work. And it's like, we're reinventing things, we're creating things, we're solving problems. So I'm not worried about it. I think 4680 is ramping up in a good way. I think if they're not doing something, that there's lots of reasons to it. Maybe they're not so worried about one part of the anode or the cathode because they're trying to get a certain manufacturing right first, and they think that's more important because we can at least scale up, and then we can take care of iterating on the back end once we figure out the manufacturing side. And that, if that's really the harder problem, I mean, we all just heard Figure AI, right? He literally, was named Brett, was literally saying that he thinks manufacturing is going to be the harder part
Yeah.
than the software or any of it,
Yeah.
right? And so maybe that's what Tesla's saying internally too. Like, let's figure that out, but instead of wasting resources on figuring out, this process for the cathode or the anode that we want to iterate on, and then we'll go. Like, we don't know these things, right? Like, so people just get so bent out of shape and so anxious about these things without having the totality of information. And so I don't know, but my biggest thing for people is take a step back. Like, nothing with innovation happens overnight. There's all kinds of wrong turns that happen, but eventually the companies that know how to iterate and get the priorities right and use first principle thinking, they eventually come out to a solution, and they eventually get where they're trying to get to. And it may not be where we decided we need to get to first. So I don't know. All that just to say that I'm not too worried about it. I think that they're not battery constrained, and right now, I think as long as that's not the case, then we're good, because the batteries are a nice to have, not a must have in the limit in 2024.
Right. So while we're on the subject of 4680s, again, because I try to talk about things that nobody else is talking about, and no matter how much I talk about this, I can't get anybody else interested. I don't know why. If we get our 100 gigawatts or any portion of that 100 gigawatts made in 2024, but let's just use the 100 gigawatts, which everybody kind of is anticipating they'll make in 2024, certainly between Cato and Austin, they'll get to 100 gigawatts. That would be 4.5 billion in cost of goods savings. Nobody's talking about that. That is $1.50 a share. I mean, it's not small potatoes. It's just in terms of the IRA money coming in. Have you heard anybody else talking about that?
It's not, Randy, it's not a sexy topic, right? Like, we don't talk about what we do, right? I mean,
Yes, right.
we do in Tesla community, but Wall Street and even, even in the Tesla community, a lot of people don't want to talk about mega packs. They don't want to talk about 4680 batteries. They don't want to talk about the lithium plant that they're in the process of building. Yeah, they're not talking about the tour that Elon did that was clearly, well, maybe not clearly, but we suspect was for different mega pack sites in all these different countries, right, to localize production. Like, there's a lot that's going on there, and this is the fastest growing segment of the Tesla business right now is Megapack, but it's not sexy, right? It's not the car. We can't see it going around every day. We don't have numbers to see it. Maybe if they did start outputting the numbers on Megapacks, or be have I don't know, just a quarterly update on how many 4680 cells they had, maybe then people would consider it sexier because we have more data that we're looking forward to, and we can see a good curve, and we know when the data is going to come out. But we don't have that. And so I just don't think people are that interested in it, which is weird. Right. But yeah, It's just on what's a sexy topic, and I don't think that's the sexy topic right now.
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll talk about something maybe a little sexier, maybe not. I'm not sure. I like to look at sentiment. I like to look at narrative. And when I say that, I'm talking about companies. I like the fact that Elon Musk has clarity on the mission, that he really makes that clear to everybody, whether it's the stockholders, whether it's the employees, whether it's the suppliers. Everybody knows what the mission is at Tesla. Everybody understands the narrative from now and into the future. And then that gives you a sentiment, gives you some kind of a sense of what the company's going to do. Last year, I feel like the narrative and the sentiment fell apart because Elon was so grumpy. Okay. And I feel like because he was a little nervous about where things were going, I believe he slowed a lot of things down. And I think that when the CEO slows things down, everybody underneath is like, okay, we get it. We got to put the brakes on. I feel like since the first of the year, that sentiment has shifted. And again, I don't see anybody else saying this, but maybe I'm wrong. That's why I'm asking you. You're the first person I've got to ask. I feel like all of a sudden everything is let's go. I mean, FSD's out. The what do you call it? Model 3 is out. Now the Model 3 Performance looks like it's coming. We've got the Gen 3 seemingly to be going on all the addition to the Austin, the end of the Austin factory. We've got the Reno decision made. I mean, we got all these jobs, hundreds and hundreds of jobs in the semi truck and in the robot and everything. All these jobs being put out there. Do you feel any sense of change in sentiment right now?
I Yeah, I think a little bit. I would agree with what you're saying. I you know I wonder, like, I do think he talked about them pulling back a little bit, right? He did talk about that. But I also think a big part of it is it's like when you have a whole bunch of house projects and you know all of them are like 80, 90% done, and it's like you just haven't gone back and done the final thing just to finish it off. I think he's also kind of annoyed with that at this point, right? Cybertruck finally got out. Okay, great, we can breathe. They finally decided on a location for the Mexico plant. Berlin and Austin finally start the ramp up. FSD still not done. I think if you've noticed, he's not. I mean, several people have pointed this out, but he's not giving timelines on it anymore. And people are chalking that up to, oh, even Elon is not confident that autonomy is going to happen anytime soon. I like that is such a weird way of interpreting that. Like, the very I, I think that's like taking two derivatives or two deviations to try to come up with that logic. To me, the clear logic is he's annoyed of people making all these little, memes of him, and these like short, YouTube shorts and whatnot of, oh, well, I said it was going to happen this year and this year and this year. And he doesn't want that reputation of, Elon time and all that. I think he's just trying to wrap things up. Like, all right, like we can't keep opening up the aperture and creating more and more things, and then we aren't finishing anything off. Like we need to hone in, get a bit tunnel vision on certain things, and really start delivering. And I don't think he wanted yet another year of where Elon said, oh, it's going to happen in 2024, and then it doesn't happen. So I don't know. I think it's a lot of that. I also agree with you, though. I think, besides the fact that I think he inward and was like, all right, we really got to start putting pedal to the metal on the things that we have going on right now.
Hmm.
I think as the year turned, as the Fed, really to your point, his tone changed after the Fed came out with 3 rate cut projections, right? So I think that's a big part of it. But yeah, so you are spot on. But I also think a lot of it was he's like, we gotta start like finishing up these projects that we started. And I think that's why you're seeing progress on 12. That's why you're seeing more of these bot videos come out. That's why Cybertruck finally got delivered. So I think you're right, but it's also a matter of let's complete some projects. Let's start making meaningful result in these areas.
So you mentioned FSD 12, version 12, a couple of different times. So it's out there. We've got some videos to look at. Holmar says he's going to do a video every single day until everybody else gets it. So, but so far the videos look pretty good. What have you thought? What has your feeling been?
I think Omar needs to step it up. A video a day is not enough.
Yeah.
We need more. And I don't know if it might have been you that I saw, but on what somebody commented that they want to see more on Omar's tweet when he posted that they want to see more with denser human areas.
Oh.
So I agree. We need to see more of that. But yeah, come on, Omar. Like one video a day. Like, come on, do two or three or I don't know. Like, do more. We want to see. Like, you've got the goods. Nobody else has it. Like,
Right.
if you're gonna have this kind of insider, I don't know, opportunity or availability to this tech, like you gotta give us more than that. We want it. Feed us. But I think it's looking pretty good.
Yeah.
It's I draw. It is very rare that myself or my wife don't use FSD.
Okay.
We use it as a we use it in, I think, the way most people do. We use it nonstop, but we know when it's going to struggle and we'll disengage. If it does something weird, we know about it. I don't let it go over speed bumps because it always goes at 17 miles an hour, even if it sees it for some reason 17 miles an hour. But I would say 90% of our driving is FSD. But you know when to take over or whatnot, and you know how it moves and all. My point is, I have very intimate understanding of how it feels, and so in seeing Omar's drive, it is just so apparent, even through video, how smooth it is, how human-like it is. It's jarring how apparent it is. Even finally, I saw one of his videos where he went over like 4 speed bumps.
Yeah.
Slowing down to 7 miles an hour. Like, thank you. That's where you should be. So I'm very, very excited about this version. I don't think there's really been a FST version where I was like, whoa, that was a huge step change. There's been a few where like, oh, that's a lot better.
Yeah.
But not like blown away. This one really seems like it's gonna blow us away. Like, just there's yet to be a beta version that come out where I watched and I was like, oh my God, that's clearly smoother.
Yeah.
This is the first time. This, and obviously when Elon and Shock went out, it was just so apparent to me how smooth it was. So I don't know. I get that I tend to be a little more optimistic than most. I mean, that's why I think you and I are kindred spirits. But people are sleeping on this. I really do think people are sleeping on this. I actually put a tweet today, not to go on too long of a rant here, but that to me, it's becoming more and more clear, especially after hearing the interview with Scott, Herbert, and Brett. There's a convergence that's happening on timelines between autonomy and humanoids, at least in the limit. And when I say in the limit, what I'm saying to the point where robotaxi will be viable and to where humanoids will be working in the factory. So that's the limit. Not to what degree are humanoids doing everything, but at least to that point. And the reason is, I think Tesla has something to kind of learn from in 2 different domains. So I think they're taking a lot of learnings from FSD, applying it to the bot. I also think they're taking a lot of learnings from the bot and applying it to FSD. Nobody else has this.
Yeah.
It's only Tesla that has these 2 different modalities, these 2 different mediums to learn from and iterate on each other. And I think that's going to allow these timelines to converge. So I don't know, it's just really exciting, especially after listening to Brett, seeing FSD 12, and it's like, man, I kind of see like why there's so much excitement internally. So I don't know. I think people are sleeping on this. People are just Gary Blacks of the world are just I don't know how else to say it. Like, I like Gary. I think he's a good guy. I think he does a lot of good stuff. But man, he is just blind, in my opinion. He doesn't see it. He thinks all these companies are going to be doing these things at the same time. No way. Absolutely. Name one other technology that's ever happened. There isn't one.
And not only that, in both of those cases, the TAM is so huge, it won't matter. You could have 100 competitors and nobody will be getting in each other's way. I mean,
Exactly.
it's just, especially on the robot. So
Yeah.
let's turn to
And sorry,
oh, go ahead. Sure,
and
sure.
just to give credit, like you've been pounding the table on this, and in my opinion, like you're spot on. Like you, Herbert, you guys have all been pounding the table on this, and I think people really need to listen more to that and less to these people who just look out, in the next 12 months.
Well, but I'm known as the crazy guy. I'm the guy that's crazy. I'm out of my mind.
Well, we're all seen in this community, like outside this community, we're all seen as crazy. Let's be honest.
All right. So Kobesi says, the Kobesi letter, he says, it's official. Markets are no longer expecting a rate cut in March of 2024. There's still a 42% chance, according to the market, of rate cuts beginning in March, but this is a major shift in expectations. Just 2 weeks ago is a 90% chance of rate cuts beginning in March. He says odds of a rate cut beginning at next week's Fed meeting are down to 2%. We're still seeing 150 basis points of interest rate cuts priced into futures for the full year. So I think I find it really odd. The bond yields were up today I'm sorry, yesterday. I'm getting lost now. I'm losing my mind. No, they were up today. That's right. They were up today. Bond yields were up today. The bond market has been up kind of generally this week. As we go to the PCE print on Friday, you and I talked about in the green room before we came on, the Truflation is sitting now under 2% for several days. The PCE has been, there you go, 1.82 for the Truflation. The PCE has been zero last time, 0.1. I'm talking about the core. 0.1 the month before, 0.3 the month before, but then 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. So 6 months, which is what Chair Powell said he wanted to see. He specifically said his number one gauge was the 6-month PCE, top of his list. So we have a little bit of a higher print on the CPI last month, but or last week, a couple of weeks ago, but I don't think that we're going to see that kind of a print on PCE. And yet the bond market seems to be afraid of it. At least they seem to be playing like maybe we will have a bad print on Friday. Okay, if the Fed doesn't want the interest rates to go under, the inflation rate to go under 2%, it would seem like they need to cut. Wasn't it you that said this? I think it was you that said this on the very first time that we got together. You said, I think they should cut between the January and the March meeting. Wasn't that you?
So no,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
I think I said okay, so I kind of said that, but that was dependent on what the CPI came out, right?
Okay.
So I was saying that if we were, below expectations, then
Right.
it's like, okay, well then it seems pretty obvious. What I have been consistent about is that I do think that when they start cutting, I don't think it'll be at a meeting. I really don't. I think it'll be outside of a meeting. They'll make a decision, and I think it'll happen faster and harder than what we anticipate. If for no other reason, I think that's how they've always been. I researched this maybe like 2 months ago, but pretty sure every rate cut that's ever happened has been aggressive and faster, right? We kind of stair step up and we come crashing down. And so normally it's because it's the Fed is late, and so they're trying to catch up. So that's why. But I think PCE is definitely the real signal. We know that the Fed prefers PCE. CPI has just been all over the place. CPI kind of seems a lot like the jobs report to me, where it's like, is it even real anymore? It's like you see all these revisions. But yeah, they're definitely not going to cut in January. Like they're not. Nobody's expecting that. And just because expectations for March are down, well, just let's see what the data says for January and then for February, right? And let's see how quickly that might change. So I don't think it's a matter of will they, it's just a matter of when. it happens, but clearly the economy is slowing. Clearly we see, I mean, rent prices have not made it through in CPI yet. So I don't know. Like, there's a certain point where you just got to question these numbers and just try to, distill what is true and what is it even signal anymore? Is it just noise at this point? Because I would say jobs numbers, that's noise. That's noise. Signal for jobs numbers is, the revisions. That's what matters. And every time, and every time the stock market gets hurt off of these numbers that are artificial and not accurate. And meanwhile, you're telling me we're adding all these jobs, and every time I look at CNBC on my phone, I'm seeing another company with layoffs, another company with layoffs, another company with layoffs. It's like, all right, well, where's that in the data? Somehow that's missing. So anyways, I do think that we'll be cutting rates this year. I do think it'll be more aggressive than anticipated. It may be later in the year, but the wrinkle in all this, the wrinkle is the election.
Yeah.
And to add a further wrinkle, I did not know this until I forget who it was, but they were being interviewed by CNBC while they were in Davos. I forget who it was, but they said that Jerome Powell is a conservative.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
I had no idea about that. But so that does add a wrinkle, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying Jerome Powell's political or going to be political or make a decision based on politics. However, you already have that dynamic in the election. For all we know, assuming Trump is the nominee, maybe Jerome Powell doesn't even like Trump, right? But no matter what, like once they start cutting, the closer it is to election, the more political that seems. And so that's the wrinkle, right?
And yet if they don't cut, that would seem political too.
Exactly. And so to me, that pulls rate cuts forward, not pushing them out.
Yeah.
So that's my theory, my logic right now. Or maybe they say, I don't care if it looks political. Maybe that's it. Maybe they're just like, as long as we get the job done, that's all that matters. Politics or not. But I think Jerome Powell is battling legacy now. So
so I'm just trying to be logical here. That's all I'm trying to be. And maybe I'm living on a different planet. But if the one thing you just said in the last meeting, Jerome Powell just said, we got to make the cut before it goes under 2%. We got to make the cut before it goes under 2%, not after, before, because if you've got the momentum already going that direction, you've got to get it before it gets to 2%. Otherwise, you're back down to 1 or 0 or deflationary. And they saw how much trouble they had getting it back up to 2%, which is where they want to be. So it would seem like if the PCE comes in this week at 0.1, now, right now, the street is thinking it's going to come in at 0.2. That's still 2.4 annualized after a 0 month and a 0.1 and a 0.1% month. It seems to me that we're there. I can't figure out why this isn't the time to do the cut. It makes no sense.
Well, and again, I think they will continue to posture in this manner. They say, listen, in August, right? They were saying that they're still going to do another rate cut this year. That was in August, end of August, mind you, end of August. We get to December, and now they're projecting 3 cuts.
Right.
They're posturing. That's what they're doing. They don't want the markets to get ahead. They don't want to see the 10-year drop the way it did. And you're starting to see we're approaching the inversion, right? Or
it's getting closer. Yes.
Yeah. So the Fed doesn't want to let the markets just run away. And so that's clearly what they're doing. They're posturing. They don't want to signal. And, they're going to keep saying what they're saying. So you're spot on as far as I'm concerned. And Jerome Powell has said that we have to cut before we get to 2. Like, that's just very logical. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see what the numbers are. I mean, maybe we're wrong. Maybe there will be reinflation, but I don't see how. People are still hurting out there just because it's this misconception. I don't know if it's a misconception because I think people understand it, but it's like they forget when they talk about inflation, they talk about what Jerome's going to do and all that. Like, people keep saying that the consumers are healthy, the consumers are doing good. I don't know what consumers they're talking to. I see lots of people. I just go to the grocery store. I can hear people vocally complaining about prices still being too high. Yes, inflation is slowing down. Prices haven't come, we haven't seen deflation.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
still up, what, 20, 30%
right.
in prices? Like it's wild.
Yeah. So, I think we'll put off this part of the conversation until we get to oil when we go through the numbers here. But I want to remind me that we want to talk in a little more detail about oil and natural gas. So let's see here. Let's look at the numbers. We've got Tesla up $1.22 in the after hours. So there you go. We'll see what happens in the morning. Should be an interesting day as we go to earnings tomorrow. Okay, let's look at the bonds next. We have the bonds. We've got down. Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I'm sorry, I looked at it wrong. Oh, we have unchanged. We're unchanged on the 10-year. We're down a tiny bit on the 2-year. We're up on the short bonds. So interesting. Unchanged at this point. 4.142 though. That's kind of the high end of this range that we've been in. I would be shocked if it goes any higher ever. Like maybe in my lifetime. Maybe not in your lifetime, but in my lifetime. All right, let's see. Let's go in now. Let's look at oil next. Oil and natural gas. This is a fascinating area for me because oil and natural gas are such a huge part of what drives inflation. So we're looking at oil up a nickel. We're sitting at $74.42 for Texas Intermediate. We're looking at $79 for Brent, 79.5, about a $5 split, which is a little more than usual. But we're in now January 23rd. The winter is in the bag, so to speak. Sure, we could have a horrible February, but basically, the oil companies and the gas companies and the people that predict and make their decisions about whether they're going to buy, whether they're going to bid up oil or bid up natural gas, those decisions are in the bag for winter. They're now looking forward to the spring and summer traveling season and air conditioning in the summer. It's a mildish winter.
Yeah.
And so the inventories are massive. Natural gas is down big time in the last month, really big. I mean, it's been crazy to watch it go down 8%, 7%, day after day after day. Oil was $96, $97, Texas Intermediate, 3 months ago? And we're now at $74. This should be a signal right there. In addition to everything else that we know, to the Fed, we're good.
I would argue that we're not good. I would argue that that's signal that we are bad. The
Oh,
fact
okay.
that all
Yeah.
this drama can be happening in the Red Sea, that I was actually reading an article today about European oil purchasers are reshaping the dynamics of where they're purchasing the commodities from. And very much like COVID happened, factories in China got shut down.
Yeah.
Well, now we see Apple trying to open it up in India. People are divesting out of China.
Right.
Well, you're starting to see Europe, the European market, start to divest away from the Middle East, the OPEC countries. Why? Well, maybe not OPEC countries because you might consider some South American countries part of that, but away from traditional OPEC
Right.
countries. Why? Because how many times are they going to deal with this?
Yes. Yes.
Right? Like how many times are you going to deal with this? When here and right now, Texas Intermediate is more affordable than what Brent is. It's more direct path. We know those lanes are going to stay open. There's no issue there, no conflict. It's reliable. We don't have to deal with this drama. We won't be dependent on Russia. We're not going to be dependent on China. Why be dependent on the Middle East if we don't have to? Right. So we're starting to see, I mean, the whole world is changing and it's a real business. You're just risking your business if you keep doing this. Countries keep doing this, allowing this. And so it'll be interesting. I think this whole Red Sea crisis will be resolved sooner than later. Because of
Mhm.
that, I think there's a certain point where, Saudi, UAE, Kuwait, all of them essentially are like, all right, enough's enough. Um, so I could be wrong, but I do think that this ends sooner than later. I also think the whole Gaza, Israel thing ends sooner than later. I think Russia, Ukraine. I think the fact that they're both talking about wanting to have talks, talking about wanting to have talks of peace. I I have hope. Again, I don't know. Maybe it's just because again I'm just optimistic about humans wanting to be good people at the end of the day, and just I don't know. I think we are generally as humans we want peace and we want happiness and we want to come together and just. I mean, these are brothers fighting each other, right? One way or another. Like they have more kinship than they do with us, right? They're next door neighbors, like in all these different countries. I just really truly feel like that's going to come to an end sooner than later, and it's going to take the temperature down across the world. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just hopium, but I do think that that'll happen. And when that happens, you're going to see oil crash even more. It's the point I'm really getting at. Because right now it's elevated with conflict, right? Oil works very much the way gold works, right? When there's stress, high conflict, high risk in the world, it goes up.
Right.
When there's not, it comes down. If right now Brent's at what, $79, I'm assuming? $79?
Yeah.
During this time period, this high tension period, potential world war.
In the middle of winter.
In the middle of winter, right? Like what happens when there's peace? What happens when we get to summer, right? So, I mean, this is a problem, not just for OPEC and those countries, but for the Fed, because that's extremely deflationary. So, I don't know. It just seems like things are stacking up for huge rate cuts.
So that your comments about war ending, Jamie Dimon over at Davos was like kind of praising Trump. And then there was some financial reporting yesterday that the finance world is now hedging a probable Trump victory in the fall. A lot of folks, I think, have pretty well figured out that that's probably what's going to happen. Do you think Putin just doesn't want to have to deal with Trump, and so he'll have to see the best deal he can make with Biden in office before Trump gets there?
I don't know the answer to that, but
he doesn't
I do
want to deal with
think
the crazy man.
yeah, I do think I do think that it's very telling that Jamie was so positive on Trump. I mean, just the fact he didn't have to say any of that.
Oh.
He chose to. He wasn't even prompted on that, right? And he chose to essentially say to people, "All right, you got to be level-headed at some point, right? Like this isn't left or right. We got to stop thinking like that. Like, what did he do? What were his policies? And I don't know if you ever watched the All In podcast.
Yeah.
But 3 weeks preceding that, Chamath did the same thing. And Chamath said the more and more we're away from, we move away from when he was our president, the more and more I realize how good he did, how good of a president he was, right? The more time you have. And I think that's going to percolate. Like, I mean, I don't think this is a crazy call. Trump will be our next president, barring some unforeseen incident. If things keep going the way they are right now, he absolutely will be. Like I don't even think it's gonna be close. I think it will be a landslide. So and I think the world is excited about that.
At least some people that wouldn't have been excited a few months ago are at least resigned and not thinking it's as bad a deal as they might have thought otherwise. And by the way, I think there's a good chance that Jamie Dimon pays attention to Chamath. I'm just guessing.
A little bit. I'll tell you what, Chamath has nailed things over and over. He called back when rates were at like 3%. He said we'll get to 5.5. Like I thought he was nuts. I didn't think we'd ever get to 5.5. He's like, we're not done. We're not done. They're gonna keep going. He's called a lot of stuff. So he's a high signal guy. He obviously talks to a lot of people, has a lot of knowledge we don't have, but I always say, listen to the people who keep being right over and over and over. Ron Barrett, Chamath, David Sachs, Elon Musk. Listen to these people. Stop listening to the people who say things and then don't come to fruition. I don't know. It seems so simple. It's like buy low, sell high. Seems so simple, yet people struggle with it.
So on the gold front, gold is pretty much even up $2.70. We've got copper up, less than 11 cents in the aftermarket. So copper is kind of in the middle of its range for the last 50 years or whatever, but not strong at all. Of course, Larry Goldberg says that that's the one to watch. So I don't think that it's really showing recession yet, but it's not showing strength either. And then the dollar is about where it's been, but it's been higher over the last few weeks than it was a month or so ago. Crypto, Bitcoin, well, it's back over 40 in the pre-market. So that's I guess a good sign for those folks. I don't know anything about it. I forget whether you care about it.
Um, I care about it in the sense that I do think crypto is good signal. I think when you see Bitcoin going up, it shows you where appetite for risk is. Um, I think it tends to I think it tends to move before we see other things happen. So the fact that all this ETF discussion, I think, kind of created a lot of hype in Bitcoin right now. So it wasn't the signal it normally is. Now that we're past that, I think it's a little more telling that it didn't continue to go up. It was kind of a sell the news thing. To me, again, this shows that the economy is slowing.
Okay.
It tells me that people are still not risk on. They're still risk adverse. And I think that'll happen until either the Fed cuts or it's clear the Fed made a mistake and they waited too long.
So the pre-market, we've got the Dow up 12, we've got the S&P up 8, and we've got the NASDAQ up 42. So the run kind of continues. I think the Dow did end up down today, right? Yes, the Dow was down 96. So the Dow has recovered a little bit, but S&P and NASDAQ ended up today again, and now they're showing positive for tomorrow morning. Thoughts?
Not much. I think the whole market is it's interesting to see some of these companies that are hitting all-time highs and are up there and not seeing Tesla up there as well because these companies aren't hitting all-time highs. Like everybody keeps saying, like the only way Tesla can go back up is by growing revenue, growing margins, and all that. I don't really see all these other companies doing that. They're hitting all-time highs. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there's a company like Nvidia has low PE, and relatively, and yes, there's lots of demand for them. I get that, but to me, the real thing is they're selling all this. Everybody believes in this AI movement, and I would say deep in the thick of it, in many use cases internally for enterprises, and it's real. And nobody seems to sit there and just think. I mean, not nobody, the majority of people outside of our community, to think, okay, well, who's buying all these chips? I know there's lots of narrative out there that Tesla's not buying enough chips and all this stuff. Again, these people don't know. I don't know what I know, is all I can say.
Right, yeah, right.
But Tesla's buying lots of chips. They have more than what they can do with. And it's not just about having the hardware. Like, this is such a myopic way of thinking. The hardware is important, yes, but what you're doing with it, how you're deploying it, the data you have, like it's one element of it, one part of it. And if you're going to factor in that Nvidia is worth this big of a company just because they're selling hardware, well, then what does that mean for the companies that are creating the software that's going to change the way this world works, the way
And
our
accumulating
lives
the
are.
data and accumulating the data in numbers that are well beyond anybody else's accumulation of data. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this is the fundamental problem. Like, I hate to bash on Gary again, but this is like, all right, Gary, if you're right, and there will be all these companies at the same time, how are they going to do it without the data? I just want that answer. If we know for a fact that you need to have the data to train, okay, how are they going to get the data? When are they going to get the data? How are they going to catch up?
Yeah.
Answer that to me.
Yeah.
And then maybe I'll believe you that they're going to get there at the same time. But until that's the case, I don't see it. And so there's no value given to these companies that we know are in the forefront of this.
Right.
People still don't look at Tesla as an AI company. People
Right.
still don't understand. People don't think autonomy is AI. People still think the humanoid isn't going to happen or isn't real. And that's just the customer facing AI and software. That's
Sure.
not talking about what they're using internally,
Right.
right? So I don't know. It's, to me, the delta is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I think it was Warren Redlick recently talked about, again, the coiled spring we talk about all the time. It's, I think, coiled tighter than it's ever been.
Yes. So Nicholas, earlier today, I did an incredible video with Brian White. I don't know if you were able to see that one, but Brian, he's got his feet on the ground. I mean, he's out there. He's got the phone. He's talking to folks, and he made news actually today with that episode about the Gen 3 vehicle, when he thinks it's going to be coming out. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm going to say that he's probably thinking it's coming a lot sooner than some other people think it's coming. And he's got some solid reasons for believing that. But for those who saw it already, good for you. But if you didn't see it already, I'm going to leave the card right here. And looking at Tesla one more time, we're sitting at $1 up at the end of the day. Nicholas, fantastic to have you on board. I'm glad that you are co-hosting the good news, because you provided lots of good news tonight. I think you did your job. I could, maybe I could pay you for another week.
Maybe.
I'll double your salary, and then you'll make twice zero.
Sounds good to me. I will say one thing.
Sure.
I like to give credit where it's due. Brian's been right a lot. And he's not someone who, I mean, remember, whenever back, I think it was October, whenever production was gonna get shut down a little bit and all that, people were saying that he's wrong, that he's crazy, all this stuff. He's spot on.
Yeah.
He's just been, his predictions, his numbers. I respect him a lot, because he's someone who doesn't go based off of rumors. He goes based off sources, and from what I can tell, it tends not to be one source. He wants to see things from a few different areas coming in with the same type of information to kind of test what he's hearing, and then he puts it out there. But he does his homework. He's, to your point, boots on deck. He's high signal is the way I would look at it. So I'm really happy to have him in the community, and I'm really excited to watch that video now. So
okay, all right, so great. So thank you so much for being on board, and to all of you out there, it has been great talking to you.